Hey everybody. Hey everybody, Mike Mills with Verity Mortgage coming to you again today with my good buddy Dave Sheehan with Reflect Real Estate. I want to find out a little bit about Dave first because I think it's important to understand people's background, where they come from and what they're about. And then it gives you a little bit better perspective on their opinion on how their life's unfolded. So tell me a little bit about, obviously we've known each other for several years now, but tell everybody a little bit about where you came from and how you got to where you are now.
Like the full origin story?
Sure, yeah, whatever you got.
Well, May 10th, 1974, about 5 p.m. No. Born in New Jersey, moved to Texas 2 months later. My dad was in flight school. He was a big fan of John Wayne. I grew up in Boston, in the snow, and decided as soon as I'm out of the military, I'm headed to Texas. So we ended up landing in Arlington originally for about the first 4 years of my life. Relocated to Grand Prairie, kind of went through my schooling there. Hadn't really left, lived in Arlington, lived in Austin, lived in Fort Worth, kind of bounced around the state.
But in Texas.
But in Texas, yeah. It's kind of one of those things, I wasn't born here, but I got here as fast as
I
could.
Right. The old
a bumper sticker. And so, been here, met my wife back in 99.
Where'd you go to school?
Oh, I went to University of Texas, Arlington. I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts there.
Okay.
We won't talk about that.
Okay.
And then...
hey, we all have our unique degrees, right? I think mine's in general marketing is the most generic degree you could possibly have.
Well, that's useful. Mine was in theater.
Okay. Well, hey.
There's not that many job opportunities out there, or at least there wasn't in the 90s.
Yeah, but you got to learn how to talk to people and be presented in front of others. So handle that, right?
This will be, I guess.
Sure.
We'll speak to that, I guess.
Yeah.
But then 3 years later, after not being able to really find real employment, I went back and got my MBA from UTA. I lived in Austin. I started a little internet thing. This was like 96, 97. The internet was brand new.
Mm-hmm.
It was like in the restaurant space. And was making a lot of money, like cash money, and didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, I better go get a business degree because I'm sure the IRS is going to come find me.
Right.
So came back up, started 99, took a couple years, met my wife. She was starting her PhD program about the same time. Got married in 2003. We have 3 daughters, live in Arlington, kind of love, I don't know why. I figured out why we love Arlington. We tried to move a couple times to different places, and I realized, especially in this space now, being in real estate, it's kind of the best place for a central location. If your sphere is kind of, my sphere that was high school, college, kind of all scattered around the metro.
Here, Fort Worth's here, you're kind of right
between. Flower Mound, so kind of central can be anywhere in a short amount of time, and kind of really like the ethnic diversity of Arlington. It's something that's pretty important to me. I grew up around a lot of diversity, and so like it.
How old are your kids?
My oldest is a freshman in college. She's 18. I have a sophomore and a 6th grader, so 18, 15, 12.
So you got the kid in college that you're paying for, and you still got another, 6 years before they're all gone? Is that right?
Yeah. I've got, and then I got like a car in a few months, and I have like 2 cars, and then the insurance that goes with that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Expenses start going through the roof.
Yeah, girls are expensive, but I'll take it. I'll take it every day over, you've got one of each.
I do, yes. I haven't gotten to where you're at yet. Funny story, actually, our kids, before we really knew each other, went to school together when they were little bitty. We found out later on, kind of getting to know each other a little bit better, that we both went to, was it Children's University, in Arlington? So small world sometimes around the area that you live and work, you run into people later on, you didn't realize you had a relationship.
Absolutely. So they're kind of like the apples of our eye. They keep us busy. My middle daughter, she's a cheerleader and show choir and all that. So
and your wife's is her PhD in health and fitness?
Her PhD is in psychology.
Psychology.
Yeah. So she's a psychologist. Well, I guess I got to be careful what I say, because apparently if you're not licensed by the state, you can't be called a psychologist.
Okay.
So she's got her PhD in counseling psychology.
Okay.
But her true passion is health and fitness and nutrition and kind of help.
That's where I see a lot of her stuff that she talks about.
Yeah. Well, I think when she went into private practice, it was pretty evident that a lot of people's mental kind of struggles have a lot to do with their dietary, nutrition, physical health, things like that. So she wanted to kind of do a holistic, all-encompassing approach to getting people healthy.
Well, I'm very excited about that topic, by the way. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. I've never done one of these yet about that. I just started doing some stuff about youth sports, because that's another thing I get fired up about. But I definitely want to talk to your wife.
Call her in. Donna would love to. Look her up.
Get the whole Sheehan family involved.
Well, she didn't take my last name.
Oh, that's right.
Look up Donna Shafir.
Yeah.
So that's what she does. We stay busy with them. If I'm not working, I'm Uber driving the kids around to their things, or helping my wife, or we're helping each other try to stay healthy and mentally sane. It's been a funky couple years.
Yeah,
but
it hadn't been normal for sure.
So that's kind of like the personal side.
So work-wise, how'd you get your path to becoming a realtor?
Man, I was young punk, 18-year-old working at Sound Warehouse over off Cooper next to the Parks Mall, and then long hair and earrings and a goatee,
The 90s.
It's like 92.
Yeah.
And they got bought by Blockbuster Music, and they were like, well, you can't have hair below the collar, and you can't have earrings, and you can't have facial hair unless it's
man was trying to hold you down.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not the place for me anymore. So I said sayonara, and that night I went to a party up in Denton and ran into a girl that I knew from Arlington, and just explained to her. I was like, oh yeah, I just quit Sound Warehouse, and she's like, oh, I got a job at a law firm in Arlington, and I was like, and I think I was making like $3.25, like minimum wage. And she's like, I get paid $8 an hour. And I was like, sold. I was like, can you get me a job?
Yeah.
I'm in Arlington. So, that Monday she calls me up. You want to come in for an interview? I was like, okay. Came in. It was like, it was data entry work. Something very remedial, but it happened to be, I was 18, 19. So it happened to be with a real estate law firm. So it was a law firm called Pearson & Patterson. They're still around today. They do doc prep for residential real estate transactions. The attorney I work for, Mike Patterson, amazing guy, super, like, very forward-looking, and we kind of delved into a lot of different little spaces. But it was a great place to work. I worked there for a number of years, and then after college, I went to Europe for 6 months, kind of traveled around, then I moved to Austin, worked for another real estate law firm down there. And that's when I started my little internet thing and decided, I needed to get my MBA, and UTA was the only program that I had passed the deadline already. So I was like, I'll just move back up there. Right. So I came back and stopped by the law firm. They're like, hey, we'll take you, come back on. So I worked there, and then kind of over time, helped them kind of transition from a very paper intensive business with a couple other
moving from analog to digital.
Yeah, I'd learned a lot from my little internet experience, and they had a couple really good like programmer and database administrators that were working there. So kind of together we pulled them into the 21st century before the 21st century. Right. It was kind of 99-ish, I guess, so on the cusp. But ended up really helping them grow the business. And anytime I was, either getting pulled to do something else, they just kept sweetening the pie to keep me there. And it was great, loved every minute of it. But kind of after the real estate crash, I started struggling a little bit, like going in every day, because it became a little monotonous. It was office.
Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over
again. Yeah, exactly. Like where I could phone it in.
Yeah.
And so around that time, a group that owned a couple Harley Davidson dealerships, kind of approached me to help go in and transition one that they had just bought. And I was like, I don't know anything about retail. And they're like, that's okay. And they're like, we don't need someone that knows anything about retail. I'm like, okay. So did that for a couple of years, went into the Harley space. And if you look at me or if you know me, it's kind of like a
right.
Like,
not exactly a fit.
Yeah, I got the beard now. I don't think I had it then. But help kind of transition a newly acquired store, and I think we did a fairly good job there. But after a couple years, I was like, I never saw my kids. It's kind of like gone before.
Yeah, working in retail stuff.
Yeah,
even if you're not necessarily working at a store, even still, you're on the mercy of their hours and when they work and all that.
Absolutely. And what I didn't know about me is like I had a hard time leaving before anyone else. I was like, and when I did, I was just like, it would grind up my soul. So, once I felt like everything was kind of leveled off and they had some great people in place to kind of take over, I was decided I needed to leave and get some time back to myself. So around that time, I was having a Passover dinner with some friends, and they're asking about the Harley world, and I was like, I'm leaving in a couple months, and they're like, oh, you need to get in real estate. Things are starting to turn around, and with your knowledge.
What year was this?
This was 2013.
Okay, so after all the mortgage stuff happened,
and so I thought about it for a hot minute, and then I was like, why not? I knew the contract to close part of the business, like the back of my hand. Of course there was regulatory things that were changing, but felt pretty confident about that. So I just looked into it, took classes, and had my license in a matter of weeks, and and then
you had to find a place to land.
Yeah, well, luckily the friends that recommended it, they owned a brokerage, they owned a franchise brokerage. And
so real quick, anybody that's watching this that doesn't realize, if you become a realtor, you get your license, you don't just get to immediately start selling real estate. You actually have to put your license with a brokerage.
Correct.
So there has to be a brokerage that sponsors you, that basically takes on liability. So if you screw anything up, you're covered. So you can't just go start writing contracts. You have to get associated to a brokerage. So you have to answer.
Yeah. So I landed with a local brokerage, full of a bunch of great people. Learned a lot, but it was a franchise, and when I think of franchises, it's, and I would see, no matter even when I hit a cap, you have commissions, and every broker's a little different, but some have caps. Once you hit it, most of the commission comes back to you. But this particular franchise, a decent little chunk was constantly going to the home
franchise,
office. Yeah,
the franchisor,
the headquarters of the franchise. Yeah. And that was
out
of state.
Upstairs.
Yeah, and it was out of state. I wouldn't really mind it so much if it was in state at least, but it was out of state. So I was, starting to do a mental math, just on myself, and I'm like, man, this franchise has got thousands of agents.
Right.
It's like, how much money is leaving the Metroplex every single month? So it didn't feel good. I was raised to kind of like shop local, support local businesses. That was really kind of my upbringing and focus. And even today, I have a hard time even dining at some place that's a chain.
Chili's.
Yeah, never. I'm sorry, no offense to Chili's. Is Chili's, is that a Brinker? I don't even know.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so maybe that's local-ish.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
But anyhow, so after like 2 or 3 years there, decided, I wanted to look for something a little more local, to kind of at least keep everything close. Found a great boutique, independent brokerage out of Fort Worth. Some amazing people. Spent a couple years there. Learned a lot. They had a really, really strong brand, a real brand focus. Mm-hmm. When I was with the franchise one, there was a lot of things you couldn't do. Like they have this long legal agreement that you sign. Like, you can't do this, you can't do that. I'm like, And I ran into a lot of that at Harley Davidson. They had kind of there's only so many things you could do before corporate will come after you. And I consider myself fairly creative, fairly out of the box thinker. And so I always felt like my hands were tied a little bit, especially when it's coming to marketing ideas or, something that's a little unconventional. Right. I'm a bit of an unconventional person, so.
You would try to do something different, stand out of the crowd a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't want to fit in, I want to stand out.
Right.
So, went over to this little local brokerage out of Fort Worth and had a great time, and they had a really strong brand and they were developing it, but it kind of had a bit of the same issue in a way, is that and which I totally understood, was hey, this is our brand, we don't want to take it kind of so far, right? We want to fit into this kind of construct. So I had the opportunity to get my broker's license, because in Texas you have to have been a salesperson for 4 years, I think it is 4 or 5 years, and you have had to perform a certain number of transactions. Right. So there's a bit of a worksheet with a formula.
You have somewhat of a barrier to entry just to become a broker.
Yeah, a little bit.
Out of the there's very little. The same thing with loan officers. There's very little barrier to entry aside from passing a test and getting a job. Right? Yeah. You don't have to have a ton of experience, but to become a broker, it's different.
Yeah. So, so I had checked off. I think probably in the first year or two, I had enough transactions to kind of qualify to be a broker. I just had to wait for that timeline to expire. So, had done that back in 2018. So I'm guessing it's 4 years, because I think I applied to be a broker, and then you have a year to take the exam. And I think I'm a bit of a procrastinator when it comes to things like that.
I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, so last minute. I was like, I gotta take this test. So got the broker's license in 2018, and from there I was just kind of always in the back of my head, like, oh, one day I'll start my own thing.
Sure.
I'll be able to do what I want. But it wasn't really until this past March, where I was just like, something, you got to take the leap at some point. Like they say, there's never a good time to have kids.
Nope.
You just have them. You don't plan for it. You do it. I just had a number of things kind of line up to where I was like, I think probably now is a good time. And so
Well, it's funny how, and I do this a lot. You know, my wife makes fun of me because I'm a big list person. Like I got lists coming out of my eyeballs, and there's a lot of things on the list that I intend to do, but don't always get around to doing. However, if I was able to like track all of my lists, like since I was like 20 or something like that, I guarantee you a good chunk of those things I accomplished. It may not be today or tomorrow, but it's kind of like I gotta write it down to make sure that I don't forget, you know, because like you have those epiphanies that Dave and I were talking earlier, we both stay up late and, you know, brain function, trying to shut it down. And I always have these thoughts, you know, in the middle of the night, like at 12:30 at night, I'm like, oh, I could do this and I could try that. And, you know, if I don't write it down, it goes away into the ether, you know, it just disappears. So even though it may have taken you a little while to get to where you got to start somewhere. And sometimes starting is just like, well, that's what I want to do. I may not do it today, but I'm going to get there.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I would, you know, had my brokers, took the broker's exam with the intention at some point doing it.
Right.
And just needed to feel that urge. You know, you can get comfortable in places.
Sure,
you know, the brokers I was with, they're great people, you know, great office, you know, everybody was very welcoming. So it's kind of like, that was to me one of the biggest kind of mental, emotional hurdles was like, if I go out on my own, chances are, you know, I'm not going to be surrounded by like such awesome people until I, you know, create that. So I did it. And, you know, the hardest part, I feel like starting a brokerage, you know, other than the exam and then leaving a bunch of people you like, was trying to find a brand or a name that wasn't already taken.
Right. Oh, yes.
That's tough. Find a domain name that, you know, for something real estate.com.
Right.
There's
like 4 left.
Nearly impossible.
Right.
I think I spent like 2 months just on that.
Right.
And it was like, and I'd landed on a couple, and then when I went to test them with friends, you know, they shot them down pretty quickly. And, but one thing I've always asked buyers, you know, when we're in a house, you know, and I don't know if you can see here, but or you mentioned it, but broker's names reflect. But every time I'm with buyers, I'm like, can you see yourself and living here? Can you see yourself raising a family? You know, and it just so happened that one showing in like February of 2020, I was saying that and turned as I'm saying it, I'm looking to like a wall of mirrors. You know, like, and I was just kind of like. And so in my head, I was like, reflect? And, you know, so as soon as they were off kind of exploring the backyard, I'm on GoDaddy looking for domains. Like, is Reflect real estate available? Sure enough, it was. And, you know, and so I bought like every variation, which I'm sure what everybody does.
Yeah.
So landed there, and it truly kind of was a perfect word for it, because one of the things I felt like a lot of brokerages kind of miss, in my opinion, is kind of the diversity of the communities that they serve, right? You know, if you look at the demographics of Fort Worth or Tarrant County, you know, it's 20% Black, 30-something% Hispanic, you know, 5 to 10% Asian, you know, and it's kind of this, and you go look at any brokerage in the market, and chances are that the agents that are there aren't terribly reflective of that population kind of breakup. You'll find brokerages that are, you know, predominantly one ethnicity or group. And going back to what I mentioned about Arlington and liking the diversity, I feel like that's important. And I always, you know, and I feel like real estate's a pretty difficult transaction to begin with.
It's a personal transaction.
Yeah.
That's the difference between most. I think a lot of people, when they get into real estate, don't realize the emotion involved in those transactions. Because if you come from the corporate world or professional world, and you're used to dealing in business to business stuff, there's very little emotion there, because you're spending someone else's money.
It's just numbers.
You know, it's just numbers. It's maybe you like the person you're working with, but that's about it, right?
Yeah.
But when you're working with someone to purchase a house that they're going to put their family in, or sell a house that's been in their family for years and years, or their very first home or their last home or whatever, like, it's a very emotional transaction.
Absolutely.
And you have to have that connection with someone in order to really, you know, empathize with what they're experiencing, what they're going through. Because if you can't, then you know, you come across as cold, and you know, you're not going to get referrals that way.
Yeah,
you know?
Precisely. And that was kind of one of the things, like, throughout my real estate career, is, you know, I'd run into clients or potential clients that, you know, they culturally were different.
Right.
You know, not that I, you know, didn't love serving them, you know, but there were things that I didn't quite understand about their culture. They didn't quite understand about me. And so I felt like it would be important to kind of grow a brokerage that was diverse in culture and ethnicity and language and things like that, because we have so many people moving to DFW and speak so many different languages. And I've only found 1 or 2 brokerages in the entire metroplex that I feel have done a fairly decent job of this, kind of creating this culturally diverse, inclusive kind of team of agents, which something that I aspire to do, because it's important. People like to work with people who are like them in most cases. And some of the toughest deals I've had have been really just because of language barriers.
Well, and it's funny because when I think when people say they want to work with people like them, the assumption is that they want to work with someone that looks like them, right? That's the assumption, right? But the reality is that we're all the same for the most part, right? Everybody wants to take care of their family. Everybody wants us to make them happy and be with their wives and their kid. And, that's across all cultures. It's very consistent, right? And so the more you get to know somebody and the more you spend time talking to them and finding out about them, you realize that there's actually very little differences between most people.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the thing, I think, just taking a few extra minutes to talk to someone and find out about them, and you realize what the commonality is, they'll work. You don't have to look the same as they do. They just want to work with you because you hold similar ideals.
Yeah, and it's never been really about look or anything like that. It's primarily about the communication aspect of it. It's as I was saying, real estate can be a pretty difficult transaction. There's a lot of nuance in it. There's a lot of details, and if someone
there's a lot of trust.
Well, absolutely, a lot of trust. So if you're working with somebody who maybe English isn't their first language, or their first language isn't your first language, there's some difficulties there that are sometimes hard to overcome.
Right.
So ultimately, what I'd like to build is something that has people that can help everyone.
Right.
Regardless of their background, culturally, nationally, whatever the case may be. Because I feel like there's fairly a sizable gap in the market for a brokerage like that. Because when I'd get a lot of leads, either through referrals or some of my online advertising or whatever the case may be, that I didn't speak their language and they didn't speak mine, and then, unfortunately the brokerage I was with didn't have any agents that were representative of
bridge the gap.
Yeah, that I could say, here's somebody I know and trust, they'll take great care of you.
Right.
I'd go out and find somebody who speaks Bengali or whatever and be like here and hope that they take good care of them, but I didn't have any control over that once I kind of did the handoff. So that's kind of where I am trying to just started this in March. I added my first agent in June, hoping to build it and grow it in a sensible way, in a mindful way. I just don't want to be
not too fast. You want to go out there and just
I'm independent, I'm local, all the money stays here in DFW. I spend way more money than I probably should in a lot of things, trying to keep it close to home, trying to keep it in Texas. I have to exhaust a lot of resources before I'll finally, spend some money out of state.
Right.
But it's been fun. It's been a challenge. It's, I love it. I have a renewed energy for it because I know I'm in total control, and it's, if it sinks or swims,
it's all on you.
It's all on me. Yeah.
So what were some of when you went through the first couple, the original brokers with the big brand name and then the smaller local one, and then now where you're at now, obviously you touched on this a little bit, but what were is there anything that sticks out in your head about each experience that kept pointing you towards, I got to do my own thing,
I'd say with the franchise one, it felt like a franchise. It felt like, McDonald's. You in McDonald's, you're going to get consistent service. You know what to expect when you go in, but is it spectacular? Is it going to wow you? Probably not.
Right.
In most cases,
you get what you get.
Yeah.
You're not wowed, but you're also, for the most part, it's consistent.
I felt like a lot of the resources that were provided, especially to a new agent, were fairly,
lower end of the scale of impressiveness.
Just safe.
Yeah.
I don't know. We got to be careful as realtors. We have this code of ethics that we can't cross a certain line when we're talking about other people's business. So I won't use any names. But it was just, I didn't feel like it was bespoke.
Right.
In a way. So when I was kind of looking for local brokerages, I started gravitating to the names in the market. But then come to find out, all the names, I'm not going to name them, but most of those are owned by
a bigger company
that
also own the other ones.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like, I was like, this broker's got a great name, but they're owned by so-and-so and that. So once again, it kind of went back to the money that's leaving the market, and it just pains me. I don't know why. I think as a child, my parents must have whipped something into me. So when I found a little local boutique that, had a good brand that I felt like was strong and everybody there had, like kind of the level of professionalism and, just
very
the
few
skills.
fly-by-nights that were there.
Yeah.
People really
Because unfortunately this business is, you mentioned the barrier to entry to get in, it doesn't take a lot. When I hear people, have flunked the real estate exam a few times, I'm just like, really? But yeah, you've got a big chunk of the people that they do it part-time, and that's fine.
Well, it's a great, my business of doing lending and your business of real estate they're very, very good representations of the 80-20 rule, right?
Absolutely.
Where there's 20% of the people that do work do 80% of the work, you know, and that's, it's just what it is.
Sure.
And there's not that many things. Honestly, I think if you look across all industries, it's pretty typical, where it's just, there's a select few of really good, individuals and companies that do this. And then there's a bunch of everybody else. Yeah. And I don't think that that's that unusual, but because this is very much a, what do you call it? We don't work, we're independent contractors for the most part. I'm not, but for the most part, most agents are. You're 1099, you're not working as a W-2 employee, so it's transient, so you can move. There's not a whole lot of held to a particular company. You'll just bounce to another one. So that just kind of perpetuates that and makes it a little bit worse, for good and bad. It gives you a lot of freedom. The 20% that are over here doing all the work, they love it because, like you said, you can take your kids to school every day and you have all this flexibility and freedom. But for the industry as a whole, because you don't have like standards that are, there are standards, but it's just how much you have to work, when you have to work. It's just, you could have a person that sells you a home that sells 2 homes a year, and that's all she ever does. And she may not know everything. He or she.
Being on the side, I hope I'm on the 20%. I get a lot of calls from people saying, "Hey, you're a high performer in the market." And I don't compare myself really to everyone else, but when you're on the other side of a transaction with somebody that is part of that 80%, it's painfully obvious. Sure. You feel bad almost for the people they're representing. A lot of times contract forms aren't even completed properly. Right. It's sloppy, so
it's fill in the blank.
It's just, it's tough. So, I feel like a lot of, some of the bigger folks that got, 700 agents or a couple hundred agents, there's a large chunk of them, 80% of them that aren't taking it serious.
Well, they cast a wide net, that's kind of how the business is built in such a way that you have to have, if you're a big brokerage like that or any of those, you got to have a large volume of people coming in because you can speak to this as well. Being a broker is a lot of risk. Like there's a lot involved. So, you have to, and once you get to a certain size, you got to offset your risk by bringing in, new people and casting a wide net for a lot of different, people and options for agents coming in, because if you don't and you try to focus on keeping it small, there's a balance. But if you, like say, I just want to have 10 very high performing agents. That's all I want. Well, that sounds good, but the problem is that several of those 10 are going to go want to do either create their own brokerage or they're going to go find another. So you have to always hedge against that. And that's why, you see that.
For sure. And you never want to pass up on talent. I don't want to begrudge any brokerage that grows, but it's just one of those
different
deals.
Models.
Yeah, exactly. So the franchise brokerage was one thing, the boutique local one was another, and I like that. It would financially it was a little bit better structured, because there wasn't a big fee that was going up to some corporate out of state. So mathematically, when I kind of mathed out the commission structures, it was a better deal to go kind of local.
Well, it seems like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like there's a progression that's pretty standard, I guess I would say, where you have people new agents that come into the business and they go work for a name brand. We won't say the names, everybody knows what they are.
Get the training.
Right, they get the training, they get mentorships, they get with teams, they learn the business. Now, that doesn't come for free, right? No. You're paying for that, right? But you're paying for that experience. You're paying to get something from somebody else that's been doing it for a long time. You're paying the franchise that gives you all the materials that you need and gives you a path to say, here's how you advertise yourself, here's how you market yourself. So you're getting So it's not like money you're just throwing in the garbage if you're doing it the right way, right? You're not throwing it away, but then you'll slide over to, okay, you're like, I've been doing this for a couple of years. I think I got this kind of figured out. So now I want to go somewhere else where the cost is maybe a little bit less because I know how to do these things already.
Right.
I don't need that extra help. I don't need to pay for that. And then once you've done that for a little while, a lot of people will sit in those. Maybe they'll bounce around a little bit, or they end up like you do. Right?
Yeah, I sometimes get a little confused as why more people don't go the broker route. But once I became a broker and saw how expensive it was from like an insurance and liability standpoint, then you start to go, okay, I kind of understand.
Yeah.
And then also kind of how lonely it gets too. Like that was I was talking to my wife this morning about it, and I was like, hey, I kind of miss small brokerage because there's camaraderie, people, folks that you can pop into an office and see, and I miss that a little bit, but eventually get there. Well, I try to keep myself busy and out there and engaging with people enough to kind of satisfy that.
Right.
But you're exactly right, and I feel like everything serves a purpose. It's like if you're in sales, a lot of times you start, when you're a kid, with newspapers, or then it's yellow pages or cars, and you work your way, medical devices, and then you've made it. So real estate's a lot like that. And I've totally lost it.
No, you're good. When you're looking for agents, right? When you're out there, because I know you've been very selective, and we've talked about this before. You're not just trying to hire whoever. What are some qualities that you personally as a broker are looking for when you're looking to hire a new agent? Do you want somebody who's been doing it forever, somebody who's new, somebody like younger, older? Like, what are your just generally speaking, I like, this is kind of what I'm looking for. Not everybody fits the box all the time.
Yeah, I think it's mostly the soft skills. It's people who have empathy. I think empathy is a big thing that's needed.
Yeah.
Because it's relating to people.
Right.
And it is, although it's transactional, it's relationship as well.
Right.
And as you mentioned, it becomes very emotional. You can be, I joke sometimes I have 5-6 wives at any given time because I'm trying to help multiple families out and make everyone happy. So I think empathy is huge. I think energy is another one because it's a tough business. There's a reason why a lot of new licensees don't renew their license after the first 2 years or whatever. I think the number's pretty.
Yeah, they fall off quick.
Yeah,
a bunch come in,
60-70% don't even renew it.
Yeah.
Because it's not as easy. I think we kind of suffer from this HGTV idea of what real estate is. Where you just open up some houses, you show them, you make millions of dollars, and there's a lot of stuff on the back end that they don't show you, and that's not the fun stuff.
Yeah. Well, the hard part is what you just said a minute ago about relationships is that's what I think everybody loses sight on real estate is, you write contracts, and you need to understand market, fluctuation, house pricing, and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the hardest part about being a realtor is creating enough relationships with people that you have a constant flow of business coming in. Because I always used to say, when I would meet new agents and whatnot, I love new agents. I really did. I liked working with new agents because they're excited, they're passionate, they're ready to go. And more often than not, when you're coming out of your real estate training and your schooling or whatever and getting your license, you usually have 2 or 3 transactions that are ready to go, that are waiting for you because you've been talking about it, you've been telling everybody, you've been doing all the right things. Everybody's excited, right?
Usually young, and your friends are in that stage.
Yeah, and so there's stuff that comes out, but that's not the hard part, and that's where the chum gets out there a little bit because you're like, well, I've been doing it for 6 months and I've already sold this house and this house and this house. And then you're like, all right, well, call me back in 12 months when the initial flow rolls off.
Right.
And now you have to go out there and really hustle to get the business. And I don't mean hustle I guess you can knock on doors. That works for some people. But just being around enough people, not being secluded, not being alone, like you said, not sitting in your office by yourself. You've got to get out and meet people and be a part of the world, be a part of the community.
Well, I kind of have landed on, and I don't know if someone else, or maybe I picked this up somewhere, but it's a lot of E's, it's like the empathy, there's energy, there's enthusiasm, there's education.
Right.
There's all these E words that I think of when I'm thinking of agents that, I'd like to engage. Engaging, that's another word. So when I'm looking for folks, it's not necessarily production. I'm not super fond of if they're that 80% that only does 20% of the work. I'm hoping to only bring on people that take it seriously, take it as their primary source of income. That are doing a dozen or more transactions a year. Ideally, if they're new, I'd like for them to be working toward that. Not
They're
just
committed.
Yeah, they're not like, I'm just going to do friends and family, two, 3, 4 a year. Because I liken it to, I wouldn't trust my body to a personal trainer that went into the gym once or twice a year.
Right.
I wouldn't trust my finances to my brother-in-law who trades day trades or whatever. It's kind of those things. Like, this is the single largest investment.
You don't want a hobbyist.
Yeah.
You want a professional.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's and unfortunately there's not a kind of component to the licensing for real estate or any, a lot of things. Like, you need to be doing X amount of transactions to maintain your license. It's just take the continuing education, you're good to go. So primarily that, I'd love for them to be of all walks of life, of all backgrounds, of all experiences, probably before they got into real estate. I mean, I was 40-ish when I got my license. And, by that point, all my friends had already bought homes, most of them had moved from the area. I didn't really, had 3 kids. So, my sphere of kind of people I hung out with had shrunk substantially. From being in my 20s.
That happens when you have a family, doesn't it?
I know.
It's weird how that works. Like,
your sphere goes from like here to like the 4 people that are in your house.
My friends or my kids from time to time would be like, Dad, do you have any friends? And I'm like, well, I mean, kind of, but I mean, you guys are my friends. Like, I'm here with you all the time.
I did before you little showed up.
And when you leave, I'll probably get friends that I can like go spend time with and hang out with.
Yeah.
Until that happens, you get all of me. So congratulations to you.
Yeah. They're like, great.
Yeah, they're like, thanks. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. My girls are cringed over everything I do. I hope they see this video and they just sink, under the table.
Yeah.
But no, that's kind of where I was. So I kind of did it on the stealth because it was about 2 months between the time I decided to go into, real estate sales and from the time I went into it. So I didn't have that big like initial wave. I think my first transaction came like a month or 2 after I had gotten licensed for like a $30,000 lot.
Right.
So that was like the first deal I did.
Whatever
and
you get,
set it forward.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, and then I was excited by it. But it's a tough. I don't really have like a really like tight description of the type of agent I'm looking for. This business is difficult.
Right.
Your wife's an agent, and it. So you kind of know the back end of the business. And some things that have intrigued me about some of the brokerages out there, that have, kind of this, some people call it like multi-level marketing or pyramid, whatever. It's not. It's just basically, people who recruit you get a little bit of money.
That's pretty normal with a lot of things.
Yeah, it's like every business. You got a CEO, you got managers, you got
they make a little more than you make. Yeah.
So there's a couple brokerages out there that do that, kind of national ones, and I've been invited to all of them, and I've been sent videos on how all of them work, and the math is like really kind of, off. I can't figure it out. Just like, wait, how many people do I have to recruit before I get some money or something like that? So
it's supposed to be complicated.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like, so you don't really ever hit it. You just bring a bunch of agents in.
Right.
So I'm trying to build something similar to that, but easy. And in my brokers, I'm not like feeing people to death. Like,
you probably have to incentivize people to help grow, right? And that's kind of what you're looking to do. Is you're saying, hey, look, I want to grow, but I don't know everybody, right? So I need people to come to me from time to time. Yep. So hey, if you help me find somebody, then I'm going to help you. As a result, you'll get a little something on top of it.
Well, it's also
it's business.
Real estate's a very, in most cases, it's a eat what you kill type of business, right? Like if you're not selling the house, you're not earning a commission,
right?
And for some people, if you go 6 weeks, 8 weeks without selling the property, unless you're doing something else that provides income, chances are things could get pretty tight for you.
Yeah.
So, and then what do you do when you're 65, 70, whatever, you kind of get to an age where maybe you don't have the energy or the passion or the whatever, the health to do it. So what some of these brokerages have done, essentially profit share, based off people they've recruited. So I'm kind of building that in my brokerage to where it's all very competitive compared to like just traditional percentages. A percent goes to the brokerage and that pays for all the tech and all the leads generation and things like that, insurance, that costs. And then there's like a percentage that goes to whoever recruited you and the people kind of above them.
Right.
And it's kind of one of those deals where I'm like, just get 4. Just find like 4 agents that you can be part of your team, so you can go on vacation a couple times a year, and you got people that can support you, and they can go on vacation and support. Because that's another thing, as a independent contractor, regardless of what brokerage you're with, there's no real requirement for anyone to kind of pick up the slack while you're gone.
If you don't work, you don't get paid.
Exactly. If you've got a few buyers
yeah.
at any given time, like how do you ever find time to take off? And that was one thing I struggled with early on. The first, 3, 4, 5 years of being an agent was like, well, I don't think I took off very often, because when you do, it slows down that momentum.
Yep.
Or comes to a complete halt, and then you got to build it back up once you come back, so you can, your time without income can be pretty elaborate. So, that's one thing that I'm trying to kind of look at for agents that are looking a little long term.
Right.
They're not necessarily focused on, I got to bring this in on every deal.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, if I share that with 4 people that are above me and I get 4 people for me, it's a bit of a wash. But then there's generations below me that I'll benefit from. So kind of doing something like that, or starting to. I've only had 1 agent, so I can be very.
We're
flexible.
not very deep into this thing. We all have plans, and then
I'm like 9 months into it, so things can change. But that's the idea, is that people can build a little bit of a team that they can support. I figure 4 people, you can fit them into a 5-car sedan. You can go have lunch with them, talk to them. They can have their own little 4 people, and so forth and so on. And everybody can help each other out, because it is a dog business, in a lot of ways, and everyone can use a little bit of support.
It's funny if you have a client that calls you and you can't answer the phone for whatever reason, a million different reasons, or as an agent you're unavailable to take them to see a house, because everybody likes to live right now. Like very few people live in tomorrow; they live right now.
Yeah.
So I need this to happen today, and when you're like, well, I can't, but I can take you tomorrow. They may say, okay, whatever, but then they're going to call somebody else and go, hey, can you come show me this house?
Or they'll be on one of the apps.
Yes, right.
Some
Or show up to the builder just all by themselves and not have any representation, right?
Yeah.
The builder gets to determine all the terms. Yeah. No, I've heard many stories about that.
Sure. And they're true. I mean, they're definitely occur, and it's very tough. I think, I wish there was more transparency, or more people saw that in the market. I wish there would be great HD TV show that just really showed it, showed it how it was.
Like how it really was.
Yeah, like just follow a new agent around.
Go see him
like
make 70
years.
Offers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And, working with, half dozen clients at any given time, and just, that. And that was one thing that kind of, when I was in the Harley business and I didn't get to see my family, I was like, oh, real estate, make my own hours. I can be as busy or as not busy as I want to be. And I get into it and I was like, I've got less time now.
Other people dictate your hours.
Exactly. And
or they should, or else you're not going to be very successful. Yeah.
Right. And if you got enough hustle, you're busy. But it was like the times that, people aren't necessarily available to see is when they're at work and your kids are at school. So you're like, your free time is while your kids are away anyway. So it did not solve that time with family, because then you're Saturdays and Sundays and holidays, and I mean it's just nonstop.
Well, you have flexibility, but freedom's probably a strong word. Like you certainly have flexibility, right? You can, you don't have to be sitting in your desk at your thing at 8 o'clock, and sit through traffic. But so you take kids to school. However, when you sit down to have dinner and you're out at a nice restaurant and your phone rings, you're like, hey guys, give me just a minute. I need to go take care of this.
Gotta answer those phones.
Yeah, because if you don't, then they go away.
It'd be a good shirt. Flexibility does not equal freedom. Yeah, I like that.
You see the logo.
Yeah,
right.
You need to coin that.
So, last little bit here. I really want your opinion, because right now, we're in a unique spot, and I'm, speaking from as a lender, rates have gone up dramatically just in the last week and a half. And it's all relative, right? I want to be clear. I say dramatically. In my world, it's dramatic. We're still under 4% for the most part, so you're good there. But it's definitely on an upward trend, and I expect it to continue that way. But in our market, especially in DFW, because that's where we live, you would expect, you see rates start to go up, demand would go down, and there has been. If you look nationally, in December applications were down. Everything's kind of starting to go down a little bit, but here, for a number of reasons, there are people still coming in droves. Yeah. So what has been your experience in this current market, and then where do you think we're headed? in the next couple of years?
This car market has been horrible. I feel bad for anyone that's in, other than sellers. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
But if you're a seller, odds are you're going to have to be a buyer. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's been most of the issue with inventory shortages. Like if I sell, where am I going to go?
Right.
So most of the people who have sold, they're relocating to a totally different market for work or family or whatever, or it's people passing away or going, moving up to retirement communities or whatever the case may be. But it has been, it's been a brutal couple years, because I don't watch a whole lot of news, but all the news that I get from my clients are from California and the Pacific Northwest and the East Coast, or they give you stories about kind of how restrictive things have been, and Florida, Texas, and a few other states have this reputation for being a little bit more open. And so that's kind of driven a lot of people who, have this newfound ability to work remotely or work from anywhere, say, well, where can we live and still kind of live a life? Yeah, and Texas has been one of them. And in North Texas, from a standard of living, cost of living, component,
it has been reasonable, right?
I would still say it is pretty reasonable when you hear kind of what other states, real estate markets are. It's still really reasonable. I think the one thing that maybe offsets it a little bit is our property tax. A lot of states don't have that.
But we don't have state income tax.
So. Exactly. So I say do the math.
Yeah.
Like if you're getting charged 2.5% to 3% on property tax, but not 13% on income.
Right. You don't have to own a home. I mean, we all recommend it, but you don't have to. So if you don't want to pay the property taxes, you don't have to.
Yeah. So from where we are now, I think it's tough. Since I got in the business 2013, things were kind of on the incline, and I don't think I ever had a buyer where it was just, make an offer on a house and they're the only offer.
Yeah, I can't remember the last buyer's market we had. It's been a while.
Yeah.
It's maybe right when I first got in the business. I got in like 2010, 11, right then, maybe. But other than that, there hasn't been, it's been a seller's market for a really long time.
And for any house that's kind of in a condition that's you can move into.
Yeah.
If I have a buyer, there's typically have been competing, but nothing, I get replies back from agents like, thank you for your offer. It was one of 40, one of 60, and even the listings I have had in the past couple of years are, a couple dozen, I think the most I have is close to 30. And it's just, it's unfortunate because those 29 people that didn't get that house, had to go at it again. So when you're an agent for a buyer, you're writing 10 times as many offers. You're having to consult your buyers in a way that it puts them in the best position to potentially get the property, make the offer that's going to win. And it doesn't sound pretty, when you're saying, look, we got to waive appraisal, we got to waive inspection, you're going to pay for the title policy. Like these are all things that you can do to sweeten your offer just a little bit, better than others, and hopefully get it. Or I do escalation addendums and.
Well, the thing that sucks too is that right now is that if you're a new buyer and you haven't bought a home in a while, or this isn't, and it's understandable because you don't do it. Like, I always compare buying a car to buying a house, in that people buy cars every 3 to 5 years. Mm-hmm. They go through the process, typically speaking, every couple of years. They kind of know what to expect, everybody understands it. But with a house and buying you and I understand it because we do it every day. It's a job. But the average person, the average consumer has no idea what they're walking into, right? So then as a maybe not a complete stranger, because you're going to get referrals and that kind of thing, but just as somebody that maybe they're not best friends with, typically speaking, you have to now explain to them that I know that house is listed for $300, but it's going to sell for $350. And they're like, what? They're like, don't you get paid on the price of the home? It's like, look, I want to get you the contract way more than I'm worried about what the price is. That's what we're trying to do. But that goes back to what we were talking about, trust, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to develop that with them so they understand that, look, I am looking out for your best interest, but that's not an easy conversation to have. And a lot of times they have to go through the experience of, all right, we just made 6 offers the way that you wanted to make them, and we lost all of them. Yeah. So now I need you to listen to me a little bit, and I can help you get the house. And even then, we may miss a couple before we get the one.
Yeah, and all the buyers that I have been getting the past couple of years, I basically lead with that. The first meeting I have, I say, look, trust is paramount. You need to trust me. This is all I do. And just know I know what's going on in the market, and tell them up front. Say, look, you're going to miss out on some houses that you love. Some things are going to pop up, and we're going to go see them, and you're going to fall in love with it. It's going to be perfect location, perfect size, style, whatever the case may be. And you're not going to get it, because it's going to take you a few losses before you get serious and start making the type of offers that people are making. Because there's people in that queue of making offers that have already gone. It is paramount, and some of them get it right away, and some lose one or two, and it's my job just to stick with them.
Yep.
And I do, and it's painful sometimes.
Yep.
You're 15, 20 offers in before they, some people will finally listen to you after 2 or 3. Right. Some take a lot longer.
Right.
And then they can't renew their lease, and then it becomes.
Now we got to do it.
Yeah. So it's
dire.
It's tough right now. As far as where I think we're going, I don't think we're going to see much of a slowdown in DFW. Just from the numbers.
Let me ask you like this. If someone asks you the question, Dave, they say, today is January 11th, okay? Should I just wait a little longer for prices to cool off, or should I buy now? What is your response to that question?
I'll send them a meme that I have saved on my phone where it's like, buyer, I'm going to wait for the market to cool down. Right. And then it's like the market, and it's like pictures of Tom Brady. Right. It's like his team picture for like the past decade or whatever. Right. And that's essentially my response is like, I've had clients that do that. Like, we're going to wait. And it's a year later, and prices are 23% more, 25% more. Some places are 40, 50% more. It's like...
And oh, by the way, rates are going up.
Yeah, rates are going up. So that's a comment, like, look, rates are kind of at historic lows. It's going to be hard to ever refinance. I always try to go conventional if you can, because, with FHA, you got that MI that doesn't go away, and the only way out of it is to sell or refinance it. And if you refinance it, it's probably going to be higher.
Yep.
So it's just all these things that I don't see it cooling off. Builders, the cost to build is high.
Really expensive. So they're not building $200,000 houses. They're only building 400
and up. Yeah. Or you're sacrificing location. Right. You're going way, you're going kind of far east. You're going far from, Cleburne. You got to go a distance from the central business locations that can become a bit of a pain point from a commute standpoint. Some people don't mind because they're working remotely or whatever the case may be. But I don't think we're going to see a tapering off. I think the rates kind of going up. Because
I like to call it a plateau.
Right? I don't even know if it'll plateau.
You don't think so? For a while. Just not go up as the same degree. Yeah. Instead of 20%, we're at 15, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there'll be, we'll probably keep seeing some increase, but right now it's just been like that for a while. But yeah, and we don't know what the future holds. I mean, and as realtors, we can't guarantee, success. And we just say, look, this is historic, and bar any major financial thing like we had in, the 2000 odds, we'll probably see pricing increase.
But even with that, and I use this story all the time, go find a house in California, any house, pick a place, pick San Francisco, Los Angeles, whatever, and go do some research on what that house's value or what it sold for was in 2006, or 2004, and it's like way up there, right? Mm-hmm. And then look and see what that house's value was in 2012, right? It came down because there's a whole bunch of reasons why, especially in California, why this occurred, right? Now, go look at that value of that house today. Yeah. And it's more than it was in 2006.
For sure.
Okay, because overall, real estate goes like this, always. Yeah. Now, it goes like this on its way up, but the trend is...
They ain't making more of it.
That's right.
Unless you're in the UAE.
Yes.
And they just build islands.
That's right. They're building islands. I forgot about that. Yeah.
But here in Texas, they're not making more land. No. So it's, I bought our house in 2006, and it right before it took a good 10% little dip, but it was 2 years before it was back to where it was. Yeah. And then, now I could sell it for more than twice what I paid for it. Yeah. I mean, it's just so...
It's kind of like Bitcoin right now.
No. But I think as far as North Texas or Texas in general, I think we're fairly incubated, for some time.
Any slowdown, which incubated in that we're not slowing down. It's going to continue.
Well, unfortunately, we have some, kind of laws built into our constitution that only lets us, like 80% limits on our home equities and things
which is
like
part
that.
of the reason, like I said, California got into the hole that they did because they were lending at like 125% above, appraised values and stuff like that. So
yeah, exactly.
bad laws built into the system.
And adjustable rate mortgages aren't as prominent as they are in the market as they were then. And people weren't having 5 houses, with the rates, everything like converting at the same time. So.
My favorite movie is The Big Short, and they go into quite a bit of detail on that one.
Yeah, that was a good one. I was working for a law firm that dealt with a lot of that, and worked with other law firms that were, had clients like Chase and those folks that were dealing with a lot of those deals, and it was not pretty.
So the long and the short of it is that waiting just costs money. Typically speaking, you may get lucky. I always say there's never absolutes in anything.
Sure.
There's always exceptions. I will say this, and somebody like, well, the other day I got okay. It happens. All right, it certainly happens. But overall, in the industry as a whole, you're going to see, especially in Dallas-Fort Worth, it's going to continue to go up. Rates are going to continue to go up every day that you're waiting and deciding. And unfortunately, nowadays, it's every day your contract doesn't get accepted because you're trying to buy a house.
Yeah.
I mean, I have people that are pre-qualified weeks ago that still haven't gotten under contract.
They're not locked.
And they can't be because you got to have a house if you're under contract. So you got to have a property that you can lock onto. And then, so once you have the house, we can lock you in. But until then, you're just kind of twisting in the wind, And unfortunately, like I said, it is what it is, but you just have to be aware that, you can't sit around and wait. If it's up, granted, sometimes it's good to buy for you and sometimes it's not. We're not saying on a personal basis that you have to buy. We're just saying that if this is what you're going to do and you have intent of doing it at any time in the near future, now's the time.
No time like the present.
Right.
Yeah.
Now's the time. So
it's my hope that it'll get to kind of a stage where
a little bit of balance.
Yeah. Well, that's market forces, right?
For sure.
With anything, the rates go up a little bit. Maybe it's not 40 offers or 30 offers on the house. It's
back 10.
10, yeah. We'll feel good at 10. Because then you got a 10% chance, right?
Say there's a chance.
Yeah, when you're telling people, there's 40 offers, that means you got like a 2.5% chance, on average. So, yeah, that's my hope. It's humorous to me because I have spoken to several agents, especially new ones. Oh, I got into it because the market's so hot. Yeah. And we're just like, no. It's like, it's probably not the hot market you're thinking of to get into real estate. But if you can survive, in like times like now, then
you'll be able to do it anytime.
Yeah, it's like, one of my friends is an agent in Fort Worth. He got into it, right at the bottom where, you couldn't give a house away.
Right.
Relatively, compared to today's, and just thriving because you kind of learn to adjust to, what you don't know is what you don't know. And if you figure it out in tough markets, I think you do pretty well. But yeah,
we'll see where it goes. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time this hour to sit down and talk. Now, just like I ask everybody that comes in, I don't know if you had a chance to think about it, but is there any stories that stick out to you, experiences, things that happened to you on either side of the real estate transaction that you tend to find that people might find amusing? I call them funny stories, whatever. Yeah.
Man, I've had a few things occur that probably most of them aren't appropriate to share.
Well, you can dance around it a little bit. It's okay.
No.
Names and likenesses.
No, not even that. Just like to explain the scenario.
Yeah.
There are some, there are some interesting people in the world.
Of course.
There are.
It takes all kinds to make the world go round.
There are some interesting properties. There are interesting people that make their way into interesting properties. Trying to think of one that would be fairly. The only thing I can kind of think of that's, PG, was more of a scary situation. I was over in south of Joe Pool, over in Lake Ridge, showing this, massive house.
Yeah.
Been on the market for ages. Was obviously in a little bit of disarray. This was 5-6 years ago. Showing it to an investor client, and it was this time of year. Sun was going down quick and early, so we got there, just after sundown. So it was dark. Flashlights out and our phones. Massive, had to be 5,000, 6,000 square foot, 3-level home, and walking to the front, and it's okay. But you went down into the basement area, and there was full blown squatter communion, happened. It was
happened upon it.
Yeah, just kind of because no signs on the exterior, but full on people living down there. And
wow.
It was a little like
Uh-oh.
frightening.
What do we
you
do?
know? Yeah. So like, oh God. I mean, they were fine. Like,
Yeah.
You know, nothing like. But it was just kind of one of those, you know, scenes as you're walking down some stairs with, you know, your little cell phone lights, and you turn the corner.
It's
And
like the
there's
Blair Witch.
Yeah.
Somebody in the corner. Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever screamed or jumped so hard when you turn the corner. But there's been a couple where, you know, I will say you'll make mistakes in any line of work you're in, and once you make them, you'll never make them again.
Right.
You know, I had a situation one time where they're, you know, putting my GPS, a house for sale, pulled up to a house, had a sign in it, you know, was there for my appointment, got there a little early, you know, a couple minutes early before my class. I unlock the box, open it up, you know, do a little knock, kind of poke my head in, and there's like a young kid playing this video game thing, and scared him to death, scared me to death. I was like, what's going on? And he looked confused, so I just like closed the door, you know, locked it back up, put the box in, and we'll come to realize that the house next door was also for sale, but it was having some work done on it. They had pulled the sign, and I just, you know, it was one of those,
you just put
just the wrong house.
Wow.
But they were, I mean, right next to each other, and it was one of those deals where like didn't have like clear numbers
You
on the
just
exterior.
saw the sign. No, I know. You just tried. You're like, it's that one. It's
Totally,
the sign.
on autopilot.
Yeah.
And man, I felt horrible. You know, reached out to the listing agent. I was like,
Sorry.
please. So that was a little scary. So now when I go places, I'm just
Double
like,
checking.
Yeah, I'm like,
is this the address? Make sure it's the right
It
spot.
was a few years ago, but man, that really kind of.
That's how all life lessons work. You got to screw up a couple times, or once sometimes. That never happens again.
I felt really.
Yeah.
About that, because I'm sure I'd scare that child to death. So
It's all right. We've all had our moments, so don't worry about it. Well, man, I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you again. Thanks for stopping by.
I love what you're doing. Keep up. You know,
Well, we'll see. I mean, you know, just like talking and seeing where all this stuff goes. So for me, it's fun because I get to, you know, catch up with people I know, and in some cases meet new people. So it's really awesome, and I enjoy it because I just like talking. I talk all the time. So you know, it's just part of what I do. But thank you. And if you guys are looking for anyone to help out anywhere in DFW, give Dave a call. He's fantastic. He knows, really smart guy, knows more than most people I deal with, and we have a lot of great conversations about all kinds of things. So you'll definitely find a point of commonality with him for sure. He's got a lot to offer. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.